2 True Scary Apartment Horror Stories. Story 1, The Haunting of Apartment 7B. I'll be honest, I never believed in the paranormal. I always thought that paranormal videos were just the result of people using Photoshop or video editing. I used to say that I would only believe in the paranormal if I saw something that convinced me. Little did I know that I would regret that stance so much in my life. It all began when my daughter moved into my apartment. I had recently separated from my wife, and she had taken the house. My daughter, Amy, was on vacation, so I was going to take care of her for 2 weeks. Amy and I had always been very close, and we were both looking forward to spending this time together. The first 2 days were uneventful, but on the 3rd day, Amy started behaving strangely. She was playing and talking to someone in her room. When I asked her who she was talking to, she said it was her imaginary friend, Vincent. I never imagined her as the type of girl who would have an imaginary friend, but it didn't bother me, so I let her keep playing. As the days went by, Amy became more distant from me. She didn't treat me badly or seem angry, but she was very distracted by her imaginary friend. She spent all day talking to Vincent, to the point where I started to worry. My concern grew even more during meal times. Amy asked me to set 3 places at the table instead of 2 and requested that I cook something else because Vincent didn't like macaroni and cheese. That's when I decided to draw the line and serve her imaginary friend a plate of food. As I went to get a drink from the fridge, a plate full of macaroni flew past me, smashing into the wall. Furious, I turned around to see that Vincent's plate was gone. I got very angry with Amy, but she claimed it wasn't her fault. It was Vincent who had done it. Despite my anger, I decided not to say anything more to her. I thought I would talk to her later, but since she had been with me for so long, I preferred to be more permissive. The next day, I promised Amy that we would go to a video game arcade night. I went shopping for a few minutes while she took a nap, thinking she could take care of herself for a short time. When I returned, I couldn't believe what I saw. The kitchen was destroyed. All the dishes were broken. The chairs were on the floor, and cutlery was scattered everywhere. Furious, I yelled at Amy for the first time. She again claimed it wasn't her fault. It was Vincent. Angry and frustrated, I sent her to bed without going to the arcade, and she locked herself in her room, crying. Minutes later, guilt gnawed at me for what I had done. I had never yelled at Amy like that, and I didn't want to start now. I considered going to her room to apologize, thinking she had learned her lesson. But before I could do that, I decided to check the security cameras in the kitchen. I wanted to show Amy the footage to make her understand not to lie to me. What I didn't know was that she wasn't lying. As I watched the footage, I didn't see Amy in the kitchen. Instead, I witnessed the kitchen seemingly destroying itself. It was as if something invisible was tearing it apart, bit by bit, with an indescribable force. I rushed to the kitchen, needing to see the footage again. As I examined everything closely, I realized that this couldn't have been Amy's doing. Chairs were broken, and some dishes had fallen from high places onto the floor. Amy couldn't have reached those spots, not even by climbing on a chair. While sifting through the mess, I found a strange photo on the floor. It depicted a terrifying 6-foot-tall man, a frightened-looking woman, and a scared little boy in the middle. The boy matched the description of Vincent. Handwritten on the photo was family photo, Alfonso, Maria, and Vincent. Could it be that the child was Vincent? I went to Amy's room and showed her the photo without revealing my suspicions. Surprisingly, she confirmed it, saying, "Oh, you found Vincent's picture." It was true. That boy was Vincent. I couldn't believe it. Vincent was real, but he wasn't a child. He was a terrifying 6-foot-tall grown man. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew we had to escape from there. I ran to the door to get out of the kitchen, with Amy standing behind me, but the door slammed shut in my face. Suddenly, all the objects in the kitchen started flying towards me, causing me pain as I tried to force the door open. I pushed as hard as I could until I managed to break it. Amy was standing there, crying. I pulled her into my arms and ran as fast as I could. We reached the exit door and opened it. But something was following us, a distortion in the air, slowly approaching and destroying everything in its path. I managed to open the exit door and ran to my car, with the apartment's lights going out behind us and the sound of violent footsteps growing closer. At the apartment doors, I caught a glimpse of a man with a terrifying smile and a shadowy face, and then he disappeared. That was the last time I ever went back to that apartment. I went to my ex-wife's house while she was on vacation and looked for a new place to move to. I hired people to move everything out of that apartment. I never had an explanation for what had happened, but at least I had the video of the kitchen to prove it was real. Unfortunately, no one ever believed me, given the abundance of fake videos on the internet. Years later, I heard that a tenant living in that apartment had taken her life. She was a teenage girl, and I couldn't help but wonder if she had encountered the same horrors we did. Story 2: Collectibles in the Walls, The Cursed Apartment. Back when I lived in New York, I shared an apartment with 3 other guys, all working professionals. Our apartment was like a typical bachelor pad, but we tried to keep it reasonably clean, sharing chores to maintain some order. One peculiar thing about our apartment was the presence of a female shadow. Whenever one of us was alone in the apartment, we would sometimes see a shadowy figure of a woman in various corners. It wasn't necessarily frightening, but it did catch our attention. At first, we thought it might be due to stress or fatigue, but the encounters became more frequent. The other tenants in the building seemed to actively avoid our apartment. It wasn't just jealousy, they appeared genuinely scared of it. Friends from college were the only ones who visited, and we often discussed the strange presence in our apartment. One day, I overheard some tenants referring to our place as the cursed apartment. This piqued my curiosity, and I decided to confront our neighbor, an older woman named Grace, to learn more about the rumors. Grace revealed that all 8 previous tenants in our apartment had mysteriously disappeared over the past 12 years. Families of the missing tenants had filed missing persons cases, but no bodies were ever found. It was unsettling to hear, but we initially dismissed it as superstition. However, things took a terrifying turn when one night, I woke to find a shadowy figure looming over me in bed. It took me a long time to recover from the traumatic experience of living in that cursed apartment. The nightmares and the constant fear haunted me for months. I sought therapy and support from my family and friends, and slowly, I began to rebuild my life. As time passed, the memories of that horrifying place began to fade, and I moved forward with my life. I continued my studies, determined to finish my education, and eventually, I earned my degree. I found a new apartment in a different neighborhood, one with no dark history or lingering spirits. I also kept in touch with the old lady, Grace, who had helped me that fateful night. She became a close friend, and we often shared stories and advice about life. Grace had seen her fair share of hardships and had a keen intuition about people and places. Her wisdom was a source of comfort to me. The news about Mr. Terrence's conviction and imprisonment brought some closure to the families of his victims. Justice had been served, but the scars of that terrible chapter in my life would never fully heal. Over the years, I've learned to appreciate the importance of intuition and the significance of listening to the stories that places hold. I've become more cautious about where I choose to live and the history behind those places. Life moved on, and I focus on building a brighter future for myself. I became involved in community activities, helping others who had experienced trauma, and eventually, I found solace in helping people overcome their own fears and challenges. The cursed apartment remained a distant memory, a nightmarish chapter from which I had emerged stronger. I knew that life would always have its share of darkness, but I was determined to face it with courage, resilience, and a newfound appreciation for the stories that shape our world.